The moment Jonas saw our daughter's face, everything changed. Not the tears of joy I'd imagined for 9 months. Not the proud father moment I'd rehearsed in my head. Just complete, devastating silence that filled our hospital room like poison gas. I should have known right then that my carefully constructed world was about to collapse. But I was Theodora Rilke, hospital administrator, master of crisis management. I could handle this. I could handle anything. I was so very wrong. "She's beautiful," I whispered, cradling baby Elsie against my chest. The delivery had been long and exhausting, but seeing her tiny face made everything worth it. "Jonas, look at her. Look at our daughter." Jonas stood frozen beside my hospital bed. His face had gone completely white, like he'd seen a ghost. The silence stretched between us, broken only by Elsie's soft breathing and the beeping of medical equipment. "Jonas," I tried again, forcing cheerfulness into my voice. "Don't you want to hold her?" He took one step back, then another. His hands remained at his sides, clenched into fists. The nurse who'd been adjusting my IV looked between us with obvious concern. "Sir, would you like to cut the umbilical cord?" she offered gently. "No." The word came out flat, emotionless. Jonas's eyes never left Elsie's face, but there was something wrong in his expression, something that made my stomach clench with sudden fear. "Jonas, what's wrong? You're scaring me." I tried to laugh, but it came out shaky. This is supposed to be the happiest day of our lives. He finally looked at me then, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not anger, not sadness. Something colder, something that made me feel like a stranger in my own life. "I need some air," he said quietly, already moving toward the door. "Wait, where are you going? Jonas, come back." But he was already gone, leaving me alone with our newborn daughter and a growing sense of dread I couldn't quite explain. The nurse patted my shoulder sympathetically. "Don't worry, honey. Some fathers get overwhelmed. He'll come around." But I knew Jonas. He didn't get overwhelmed. He was steady, reliable, boring even. This wasn't normal. 20 minutes later, my sister Mira burst through the door with enough flowers to stock a funeral home. "Oh my God, Theo, she's gorgeous. Where's Jonas? Taking pictures in the hallway?" "He stepped out for air," I said carefully. Mira's expression shifted to concern, mixed with irritation. "Seriously, his wife just gave birth and he's taking a smoke break. That man has issues." "He doesn't smoke, Mira." "You know what I mean. He's always been emotionally stunted. Remember your wedding? He barely smiled during the ceremony." I wanted to defend him, but doubt was already creeping in. Maybe Mira was right. Maybe Jonas just couldn't handle the emotion of becoming a father. It wasn't his fault, really. Some people struggled with big life changes. My phone buzzed with a text message. For a moment, I hoped it was Jonas explaining where he'd gone. Instead, I saw Miles Harper's name on the screen. "We need to talk." My blood turned to ice. Miles was a radiology tech here at the hospital, and we'd grown close over the past few months. Very close. But he knew better than to contact me now, especially with my family around. I quickly deleted the message and slipped my phone under my pillow. "Who is that?" Mira asked, bouncing Elsie gently. "Nobody important. Probably work stuff." Jonas's mother Clara arrived an hour later, followed by his father Derek. They brought a massive teddy bear and matching outfits for Elsie, but I could see the tension in Clara's face the moment she walked in. "Where's Jonas?" she asked immediately. "He went to get coffee," I lied smoothly. "You know how he gets when he's tired." Clara's eyes narrowed slightly. She'd never liked me much, though she was too polite to say so directly. "He's been tired a lot lately." "Work stress," I explained. "The new project has him pulling long hours." Derek nodded sympathetically, but Clara continued studying my face like she was reading a medical chart. "When was Elsie born exactly?" The nurse mentioned it was earlier than expected. "Babies come when they're ready," I said with a forced smile. "The doctor said everything's perfectly normal." but Clara's expression suggested she was doing math in her head, and I didn't like the conclusion she might reach. Jonas finally returned 3 hours later, just as visiting hours were ending. He looked composed again, almost eerily calm. He kissed my forehead dutifully and made appropriate comments about Elsie's tiny fingers and perfect nose, but he still wouldn't hold her. That night, after everyone left, I tried to talk to him about it. "Jonas, I know this is overwhelming, but she's our daughter. She needs her father." He was staring out the hospital window at the parking lot below. "Does she?" "What kind of question is that? Of course she does." "I've been thinking, Theo, about timing, about dates." My heart started racing. "What do you mean?" "You know what I mean." I forced myself to sound confused, even hurt. "No, I don't. Jonas, you're starting to worry me. This isn't like you." He turned to face me then, and I saw that cold look again. "Isn't it? Maybe you don't know me as well as you think." "What's that supposed to mean?" But he was already gathering his jacket. "I'm going home. You need rest." "Jonas, wait. Please, talk to me." He paused at the door. "We'll talk when you're ready, to be honest." After he left, I lay in the dark hospital room holding Elsie, trying to convince myself everything would be fine. Jonas was just stressed. New fathers often struggled with adjustment. Once we got home and settled into a routine, things would go back to normal. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Miles. "Saw Jonas in the parking lot. He looked upset. Everything okay?" I stared at the message for a long time before deleting it without responding. Miles was part of the problem. If Jonas suspected something, I needed to put distance between us immediately. But as I drifted off to sleep, one thought kept circling through my mind. Jonas had always been good at math. The first week home with Elsie should have been magical. Instead, it felt like living in a house with a polite stranger who happened to share my last name. Jonas went through all the motions of new fatherhood. He assembled the crib, stocked the nursery with supplies, and took his paternity leave as scheduled. But he did it all with the mechanical efficiency of someone completing a work assignment. He still wouldn't hold Elsie unless absolutely necessary. "Maybe he's afraid he'll drop her," I told Mira during one of our daily phone calls. "Some men are intimidated by newborns." "Or maybe he's being a selfish ass," Mira replied bluntly. "Seriously, Theo, you just had his baby. The least he could do is pretend to be happy about it." I wanted to argue, but Jonas chose that moment to walk through the living room without even glancing at Elsie in her bouncy seat. He'd been doing that a lot lately, moving through our house like he was avoiding landmines. At work, things weren't much better. I'd returned to my administrative duties at the hospital after 2 weeks, and the whispers started almost immediately. "How's married life treating you, Theo?" asked Janet from billing, with a knowing smirk that made my skin crawl. "Fine, why?" "Oh, no reason. Just noticed you and Miles seemed pretty close before your maternity leave. Lots of late nights in the office." I kept my expression neutral. "Miles and I worked on several projects together. It's called being professional." But Janet's smirk suggested she wasn't buying it, and I realized with growing horror that people had been watching us more closely than I'd thought. The situation got worse when Dr. Weber, my supervisor, called me into her office 3 days later. "Theodora, I need to discuss something sensitive with you." My stomach dropped. "What kind of something?" "We've received an anonymous complaint about inappropriate workplace relationships. I'm required to investigate any allegations that might affect our professional environment." I forced myself to look confused rather than panicked. "I'm sorry, Dr. Weber, but I have no idea what you're talking about." "The complaint specifically mentions you and Miles Harper from radiology. It alleges that you two have been involved in a personal relationship that's created uncomfortable dynamics for other staff members." "That's absolutely ridiculous," I said, putting on my best indignant voice. "Miles and I are colleagues, nothing more. We've worked together on several administrative projects, but everything has been completely professional." Dr. Weber studied my face carefully. I hope that's true, Theodora, because if there's any truth to these allegations, it could seriously impact your position here. We have strict policies about workplace relationships, especially when they involve potential conflicts of interest. There's no conflict because there's no relationship, I insisted. Someone is obviously trying to cause trouble for me, probably because they're jealous of my recent promotion. I hope you're right, but I'd advise you to be extra careful about appearances going forward, and perhaps limit your one-on-one interactions with Mr. Harper until this blows over. Walking back to my office, I felt like everyone was watching me. Every conversation seemed to stop when I passed. Every glance felt loaded with suspicion. I needed to talk to Miles, but Dr. Weber's warning made that impossible. Instead, I focused on damage control, making sure to be extra friendly with other colleagues and mentioning Jonas and Elsie whenever possible. My husband is such a devoted father, I told the nurses' station during my afternoon rounds. He's already talking about teaching Elsie to ride a bike. It was a complete lie. Jonas hadn't talked about Elsie's future at all. He barely acknowledged her existence. That evening, I tried once again to bridge the growing gap between us. Jonas, we need to talk about what's happening between us. This silence isn't healthy for anyone, especially Elsie. He was sitting at his laptop, presumably working, though I noticed he'd been spending a lot of time on websites that had nothing to do with his software engineering job. "What would you like to talk about?" he asked without looking up. "About us, about our family, about why you're acting like Elsie doesn't exist." "I'm not acting like anything. I'm being responsible. I'm providing for her needs." "Emotional needs, Jonas. She needs her father to love her." He finally looked at me then. "Does she, or does she need her actual father to love her?" The words hit me like a physical blow. "How can you say something like that? She is your daughter." "Is she?" "Of course she is. Jonas, what's gotten into you? This paranoia isn't like you. You keep saying things aren't like me. Maybe the problem is that you never really knew me to begin with." I tried a different approach, softening my voice. "Honey, I know you're scared. Becoming a parent is terrifying. But we're in this together. We're a team." "Are we? Because lately, it feels like you're on a team with someone else entirely." My heart started racing again. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You tell me, Theo. You're the one with all the answers." Before I could respond, my phone rang. Clara's name appeared on the screen. "Hi, Clara. What's up?" "I was hoping to come by tomorrow and spend some time with Elsie. I've hardly seen her since the hospital." I glanced at Jonas, who was watching me with that unreadable expression. "Tomorrow's not great. I have a lot of work to catch up on." "What about this weekend?" "We're pretty busy this weekend too. Maybe next week." There was a pause. "Theodora, is everything all right? You seem to be avoiding family visits." "Not at all. We're just adjusting to our new routine." "You understand?" "Actually, I don't. Grandparents are usually welcome to help with new babies, unless there's a reason you don't want us around." Jonas was still staring at me, and I felt trapped between his cold scrutiny and his mother's probing questions. "There's no reason, Clara. I just think it's important for us to bond as a nuclear family first." "I see. Well, please tell Jonas I called. I'd like to hear from my son occasionally." After she hung up, Jonas shook his head slowly. "My mother thinks you're hiding something. Your mother has never liked me. She's looking for problems that don't exist." "Is she? Or is she just more observant than I used to be?" That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Jonas slept on the far edge of our bed. We hadn't been intimate since before Elsie's birth, which was normal after delivery. But the emotional distance felt like an ocean between us. I kept replaying our conversations, looking for signs of how much he actually knew versus how much he suspected. The timing comments worried me most. Jonas was methodical about everything. If he was calculating dates, he'd be thorough about it. My phone buzzed with a text from Mira. "How's the perfect husband tonight? Still giving you the silent treatment?" I typed back, "He's just adjusting. It takes time." "Bullshit. He's being emotionally abusive. You deserve better than this." Reading Mira's words, I felt a surge of righteous anger. She was right. I had just given birth to a beautiful daughter, and instead of supporting me, Jonas was making everything about his own insecurities and paranoia. Maybe it was time to stop making excuses for him. 2 weeks later, I decided it was time to show everyone that the Rilke family was doing just fine. I organized a dinner at Romano's, our favorite family restaurant, and invited both sets of parents plus a few close friends. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" Jonas asked when I told him about the dinner. "Things have been tense lately." "Exactly why we need this," I replied, adjusting Elsie's outfit. "Everyone's worried about us. We need to show them we're happy and united." Jonas's expression suggested he thought we were anything but united, but he didn't argue. The restaurant was busy that evening, filled with families celebrating various occasions. I'd chosen a large round table in the center of the dining room where everyone could see us. If we were going to do this, we might as well do it right. Clara and Derek arrived first, followed by my parents who'd driven down from Albany. Mira came with her boyfriend Kevin, and I'd also invited Janet from work, along with a few other colleagues. The evening started well enough. Everyone cooed over Elsie, who was being an angel in her carrier. I made sure to sit next to Jonas, occasionally touching his arm or leaning against him to project the image of a happy couple. But Jonas remained strangely quiet throughout dinner, responding to questions with minimal answers and avoiding eye contact with most of the table. "So, Jonas," my father said, cutting into his steak, "how's fatherhood treating you? Ready for those sleepless nights?" "It's an adjustment," Jonas replied without elaborating. "He's been amazing," I jumped in quickly. "So helpful with night feedings and diaper changes. I couldn't ask for a better partner." Mira nodded enthusiastically. "That's what I keep telling people. Jonas might not be the most expressive guy, but he shows love through actions." I saw Clara exchange a look with Derek that suggested they weren't buying our performance. "Speaking of actions," Clara said carefully, "we'd love to babysit sometime so you two can have a date night. New parents need time to reconnect." "That's sweet of you," I said, "but we're not ready to leave Elsie yet. Maybe in a few months." "A few months?" Derek looked surprised. "Most parents are desperate for a break after the first week." "We're very hands-on parents," I explained. "We believe in attachment parenting." Jonas made a sound that might have been a laugh, but when I looked at him, his expression was unreadable. Halfway through dinner, I noticed Miles Harper at a table across the restaurant with several other hospital staff members. Our eyes met briefly, and he gave me a small wave that I pretended not to see. Unfortunately, Janet noticed the interaction. "Oh, look, there's Miles from radiology," she said loudly. "Should we invite him over to meet the baby?" "I don't think that's necessary," I said quickly. "We're having a family dinner." "But you two work so closely together. I'm sure he'd love to see little Elsie." Before I could stop her, Janet was waving Miles over to our table. My heart started pounding as he approached with obvious reluctance. "Hey, Theo," he said awkwardly. "Congratulations on the baby. She's beautiful." "Thank you," I replied stiffly. "Miles, this is my family. Everyone, this is Miles Harper from the hospital." Jonas was watching this interaction with laser focus, and I could see him cataloguing every detail. "Nice to meet you all," Miles said. "Theo's told me a lot about you." "Has she?" Clara's voice was sharp with interest. "How well do you two know each other?" "We work together," I answered before Miles could respond. "Miles helped with some administrative projects while I was preparing for maternity leave." "Right," Miles agreed, but he looked uncomfortable. "Well, I should get back to my table. Congratulations again." As he walked away, I felt like everyone was staring at me. Jonas's jaw was clenched so tight I worried his teeth might crack. "He seems nice," Mira said innocently. "Very friendly." "Most people at the hospital are friendly," I replied. "It's a collaborative work environment." But the damage was done. The rest of dinner felt strained, with undercurrents of tension I couldn't quite navigate. Things got worse when Jonas excused himself to use the restroom and didn't return for 15 minutes. When he finally came back, his phone was buzzing constantly with notifications that he kept checking under the table. "Popular tonight," Derek observed. "Work stuff," Jonas muttered. "On a Saturday night?" Jonas didn't answer, but his phone kept buzzing. Each notification seemed to make him more tense until finally he stood abruptly. "I need to step outside for a minute." "Jonas, where are you going?" I called after him, but he was already walking toward the exit. The table fell silent. Everyone was looking at me expectantly, waiting for an explanation I couldn't give. "He's been under a lot of stress lately," I said finally. "The new baby, work pressure. You know how it is." "Actually, I don't," Clara said coolly. "When Derek and I had Jonas, he was over the moon, couldn't stop talking about his son." "Every man handles fatherhood differently," Mira jumped in defensively. "Some people need time to adjust to big changes." "Some people," Clara repeated, "but not Jonas. He's wanted children for years." The implication hung in the air like smoke. I felt my cheeks burning with embarrassment and anger. "I don't appreciate what you're suggesting," I said. "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm stating facts about my son's character." "Maybe your son's character isn't what you think it is," Mira snapped. "Maybe he's not the perfect man you've built up in your head." Derek put a warning hand on Clara's arm, but she wasn't finished. "My son is loyal, honest, and devoted to his family. If he's acting strangely, there's a reason for it. The reason is that he's being emotionally immature," Mira shot back. "Theo just had his baby, and instead of supporting her, he's making everything about himself." "His baby?" Clara's voice was dangerously quiet. "Are you certain about that?" The question hit the table like a bomb. Everyone froze, staring at Clara in shock. "How dare you?" I whispered. "I dare because I love my son, and I can see he's in pain. I dare because something isn't adding up and everyone's too polite to say it." I stood up shakily, clutching Elsie's carrier. "I don't have to listen to this." "No, you don't," Clara agreed, "but Jonas does. And he's been listening for weeks." I looked around the table for support, but even my own parents looked uncomfortable. Only Mira was clearly on my side, glaring at Clara with open hostility. "You're a bitter old woman who can't stand that your son chose me over your approval," I said. Clara smiled sadly. "My dear, I gave my approval years ago when Jonas married you. I welcomed you into our family with open arms. But that was before you betrayed everything we stand for." "I haven't betrayed anything." "Haven't you?" Jonas chose that moment to return to the table. He took one look at our faces and sighed heavily. "Let's go home, Theo." "Jonas, your mother just accused me of—" "I heard what she said. Let's go." We left the restaurant in awful silence, with the weight of everyone's stares following us out the door. In the car, Jonas drove without speaking while I fumed in the passenger seat. "I can't believe your mother said that to me. In front of everyone." "Can't you?" "No, I can't. It was cruel and unfair and completely out of line." "Was it unfair, or was it accurate?" I stared at him in shock. "You're taking her side?" "I'm not taking anyone's side, Theo. I'm just tired of pretending everything's normal when it obviously isn't." "What's not normal is your family's treatment of me. What's not normal is your behavior toward your own daughter." "My daughter." The way he said it made my blood run cold. "Yes, your daughter. Our daughter." Jonas pulled into our driveway and turned off the engine. He sat there for a long moment, staring at our house like he'd never seen it before. "Theo, I'm going to ask you one more time to be honest with me." "About what?" "About Elsie, about Miles, about what's really been going on." I felt trapped between confession and denial, between the truth and the life I'd built on lies. "There's nothing to be honest about. You're all being paranoid and cruel." Jonas nodded slowly, like I'd confirmed something he'd been thinking. "Okay then, we'll do this the hard way." As we walked into our house, I had no idea what he meant by that, but something in his voice told me I was about to find out. The next morning, I woke up to find Jonas's side of the bed empty and cold. It was barely 6 a.m., but I could hear him moving around in his home office down the hall. I found him sitting at his computer, surrounded by papers and manila folders. He'd obviously been up for hours. "What are you doing?" "Research," he said without looking up. "What kind of research?" "The kind I should have done months ago." I moved closer and saw bank statements spread across his desk, along with printed emails and what looked like phone records. "Jonas, what is all this?" "Evidence." The word sent ice through my veins. "Evidence of what?" "You tell me." I tried to see what was on his computer screen, but he minimized the window before I could get a good look. "This is insane. You're acting like I'm some kind of criminal." "Are you?" "No. I'm your wife, the mother of your child. Why are you treating me like the enemy?" Jonas finally turned to face me. His eyes were red-rimmed from lack of sleep, but they were also clearer than I'd seen them in weeks. "Because I think that's what you are, Theo. I think you've been my enemy for months, and I was too trusting to see it." "That's not true." "Isn't it? Then explain this." He handed me a printed bank statement. My name was highlighted in several places, showing cash withdrawals I'd made over the past few months. "Explain what?" "I took money out of our account. It's my account too. $300 every Friday for 6 weeks, always from the ATM near the hospital, always around the time your shift ended." My mouth went dry. Those withdrawals had been for hotel rooms where Miles and I had met, but I couldn't tell Jonas that. I was buying baby supplies, setting up the nursery. You know how expensive everything is. "Show me the receipts." "I don't keep every receipt, Jonas. That's ridiculous." "Is it? Because you keep receipts for everything else. You're obsessive about our budget." He was right, and we both knew it. I always kept receipts, organized by category, in a filing system that Jonas used to tease me about. I threw them away. I didn't think I'd need to justify buying things for our daughter. "Our daughter." Again, that tone that made the word sound like a question. "Yes, our daughter." "Why do you keep saying it like that?" Instead of answering, Jonas handed me another piece of paper. It was a calendar, with dates circled in red ink. "What is this?" "Elsie's due date based on your last period, versus when she was actually born, versus when we last had sex." I stared at the calendar, my heart pounding. Jonas had always been good with details, but this level of analysis was terrifying. Babies don't always come exactly on schedule. No, they don't, but they usually don't come 3 weeks early and still weigh 7 pounds, 2 ounces. He had another paper ready, Elsie's birth certificate with her weight and length highlighted. "I've been doing research on premature babies, Theo. Babies born at 37 weeks typically weigh between 4 and 6 pounds. Elsie was in the normal range for a full-term baby. Every pregnancy is different. The doctor said she was healthy." The doctor said a lot of things, but doctors don't usually question paternity unless they have a reason to. No one questioned anything. Didn't they? Because I called Dr. Martinez yesterday, had an interesting conversation about Elsie's development and what it suggested about her actual gestational age. I felt the walls closing in around me. "You called my doctor? Behind my back?" "I called our daughter's doctor. As her father, I have that right. Unless I'm not her father." "You are her father." "Jonas, this obsession with dates and numbers is making you crazy. You're looking for problems that don't exist." "Am I?" He turned back to his computer and pulled up something that made my blood freeze. It was the hospital's internal messaging system, showing conversations between me and Miles. "How did you get those?" "I have friends in IT. Amazing what people can recover from supposedly deleted files." I scanned the messages, my panic growing with each line. They weren't explicitly sexual, but they were flirtatious enough to be damning. Jokes about working late together, comments about meeting up after shifts, inside references that would be obvious to anyone reading them. Those messages are taken out of context. Are they? Because there are about 50 of them over the past 4 months, all during times when you told me you were working on administrative projects. I was working on projects, with Miles and other people. Show me the projects. What? Show me these administrative projects you were working on. Show me the files, the reports, the documentation. If you were doing legitimate work, there should be a paper trail. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came. There had been no projects. It had all been an excuse to spend time with Miles. You can't, can you? Because there were no projects. There was just you and Miles, meeting in empty offices and hotel rooms, using our money and my trust to fund your affair. It wasn't an affair. The words came out too quickly, too desperately. Jonas raised an eyebrow. What wasn't an affair? I mean, there was no affair to begin with. You're imagining things. I'm imagining the hotel receipts I found in your purse. My heart stopped. You went through my purse? I went through everything, Theo. Your purse, your car, your computer. Amazing what you find when you actually look. He opened a desk drawer and pulled out a stack of hotel receipts, all from the same hotel near the hospital, all on days when I'd told Jonas I was working late. The Marriott downtown, every Friday for 6 weeks. Same room type, same rate. Want to tell me what administrative projects required overnight accommodations? I felt like I was drowning. Every lie I'd told was coming back to haunt me, every careful deception unraveling before my eyes. Jonas, I can explain. Can you? Because I'm really curious to hear this explanation. I'm curious to hear how my wife justified spending our money on hotel rooms while carrying another man's baby. She's not another man's baby. Prove it. What? Prove she's mine. Take a paternity test. The suggestion hit me like a physical blow. I'm not subjecting our daughter to medical tests because of your paranoid delusions. Our daughter. You keep saying that, but if she's really our daughter, you should have no problem proving it. The fact that you're asking proves you don't trust me. How can we have a marriage without trust? We can't, which is why I've already scheduled the test. I stared at him in shock. You did what? I called Dr. Martinez this morning, explained the situation. She's scheduling a paternity test for next week. You can't do that without my permission. Actually, I can. As Elsie's legal father, I have the right to request medical testing if I have concerns about her health or parentage. I won't let you do this to her, to us. You don't have a choice, Theo. It's already done. I sank into a chair, feeling like my world was collapsing around me. Everything I'd worked to build, everything I'd convinced myself was justified, was falling apart. Jonas, please. Can we talk about this rationally? I've been trying to talk to you for weeks. You've lied to my face every single time. I haven't lied about anything important. You haven't told the truth about anything important. There's a difference. He stood up and started gathering the papers on his desk. Where are you going? To see a lawyer. A lawyer? Jonas, don't you think that's a little extreme? Extreme? My wife has been having an affair, spending our money on hotel rooms, and may have passed off another man's child as mine. I think consulting a lawyer is the most reasonable thing I've done in months. I'm not having an affair. But he was already walking out of the room, leaving me alone with the evidence of my betrayal spread across his desk. I picked up one of the hotel receipts with shaking hands. Room 412, the same room Miles and I had used for our Friday afternoon meetings, the same room where Elsie had probably been conceived. For the first time since this nightmare began, I allowed myself to consider the possibility that Jonas was right, that Elsie might not be his daughter, that everything I'd told myself about our marriage being broken, about Jonas being emotionally distant, had just been excuses to justify what I'd wanted to do anyway. But it was too late for honesty now. Jonas had already made up his mind, already started gathering evidence, already called lawyers. The only question was whether I could salvage anything from the wreckage I'd created. I spent the rest of that day in a panic, calling Mira and trying to figure out how to handle Jonas's ultimatum. He's bluffing, Mira insisted. He's trying to scare you into admitting to something you didn't do. But what if he's not bluffing? What if he really goes through with the paternity test? Then you'll prove him wrong and he'll look like an ass. Theo, you need to stop letting him manipulate you like this. But I knew something Mira didn't. I knew there was a very real chance the test would prove Jonas right. The next few days passed in a blur of tense silence and careful avoidance. Jonas moved into the guest room and communicated with me only about practical matters related to Elsie's care. He was still providing for her needs, but with the mechanical efficiency of a hired caregiver rather than a father. At work, things got even worse. Dr. Weber called me into her office again on Wednesday morning. Theodora, we need to discuss the situation with Mr. Harper. What situation? Several staff members have come forward with concerns about your relationship. There are also some questions about your work schedule and time management. My stomach dropped. What kind of questions? Questions about the administrative projects you've been working on. When I asked other department heads about these projects, no one seemed to know what I was talking about. I felt trapped. They were preliminary projects, exploratory research. For 6 months, with no documentation or reports. We were still in the planning phases. Dr. Weber leaned back in her chair, studying me with obvious skepticism. Theodora, I'm going to be direct with you. There's a perception among staff that you've been using work time and resources for personal activities. There are also concerns that your relationship with Mr. Harper has created an uncomfortable work environment. What kind of concerns? The kind that could result in disciplinary action if they're substantiated. I'm recommending that you take some personal time to resolve whatever's happening in your private life before it further impacts your professional responsibilities. Are you suspending me? I'm strongly suggesting that you take voluntary leave while we conduct a more thorough review of the situation. I wanted to argue, but I could see the determination in her eyes. Someone had been talking, probably multiple someones. My carefully constructed professional image was crumbling, just like my marriage. How long? 2 weeks minimum, possibly longer depending on what our review uncovers. I left her office feeling like a criminal. In the hallway, I saw Miles talking with a group of nurses. When he spotted me, he quickly looked away and continued his conversation. That evening, I tried one last time to reach Jonas. We need to talk about what's happening between us. He was feeding Elsie a bottle, one of the few times he'd voluntarily interacted with her all week. What's there to talk about? About our marriage, about our future, about whether we can work through this. Can we? Because that requires honesty from both parties. I've been honest with you. Jonas laughed bitterly. Have you? Then let me ask you directly. Have you had any kind of romantic or sexual relationship with Miles Harper? The moment of truth had arrived. I could confess everything and hope for forgiveness, or I could maintain the lie and hope the paternity test somehow went in my favor. No, Miles is a colleague and friend, nothing more. Jonas nodded slowly, like he'd expected that answer. Okay, then you won't mind if I show you something. He handed me his phone. On the screen was a text conversation between him and someone named David Chen. Who's David Chen? Private investigator. I hired him yesterday. I scrolled through the messages, my horror growing with each line. David had been following Miles and me, documenting our meetings, taking photographs. You hired someone to spy on me. I hired someone to find the truth since you won't tell it. The messages included timestamps and locations of meetings between Miles and me going back months. There were photos of us entering and leaving the hotel, sitting close together in restaurant booths, walking hand in hand through hospital parking garages. Jonas, I can explain. Can you? Because these photos seem pretty self-explanatory. I stared at the evidence of my betrayal, undeniable and damning. There was no way to spin these images as innocent friendship or professional collaboration. It's not what it looks like. It looks like my wife having an affair with a coworker while pregnant with what she claimed was my child. It wasn't an affair. It was complicated. Complicated how? I struggled to find words that would make him understand. Our marriage was in trouble, Jonas. We were growing apart. You were always working, always distant. I felt alone and neglected. So you decided to sleep with someone else. I decided to find someone who actually cared about my feelings. The words came out harsher than I'd intended, but I was tired of being defensive. Maybe it was time for Jonas to hear some uncomfortable truths about our relationship. Miles listened to me. He made me feel appreciated and desired. He gave me things you never did. Like what? Like attention, like affection, like the feeling that I mattered to someone. Jonas was quiet for a long moment, still holding Elsie's bottle. So this is my fault. I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm saying our marriage had problems that we never addressed. And your solution was to have an affair and get pregnant by another man. I don't know that she's not yours. Don't you? I looked at Elsie in his arms, really looked at her for the first time in days. She had Miles's dark hair, an olive complexion, nothing like Jonas's fair colouring. She had Miles's nose and chin structure, subtle but noticeable if you knew what to look for. The timing is confusing, I admitted quietly. The timing isn't confusing, Theo. The timing is clear. You just don't want to face it. He stood up and placed Elsie in her crib, then turned back to me with an expression I'd never seen before. I've made some decisions. What kind of decisions? I'm filing for separation. I've already moved money into a separate account and contacted a lawyer about custody arrangements. The words hit me like a sledgehammer. Jonas, don't do anything hasty. We can work through this. Can we? Because you just spent 20 minutes justifying your affair instead of apologizing for it. I'm sorry for all of it. But people make mistakes, Jonas. Marriage is about forgiveness. Marriage is about trust and honesty and commitment. You've violated all three. So that's it. You're just giving up on us. I'm not giving up on anything. I'm accepting reality, something you might want to try. He walked toward the door, then paused. The paternity test is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Whether you cooperate or not, it's happening, and depending on the results, we'll proceed accordingly. After he left, I sat in the nursery holding Elsie, trying to imagine a future where she wasn't Jonas's daughter, where I was a single mother with a ruined reputation and a destroyed career. For the first time since this nightmare began, I realized that my lies hadn't just hurt Jonas. They'd hurt everyone, including the innocent baby in my arms who would grow up without the father she'd known for the first months of her life. But it was too late for regret now. All I could do was wait for the test results and hope for a miracle I didn't deserve. The paternity test results arrived Thursday morning. Jonas opened the email while I sat across from him at the kitchen table, Elsie asleep in her carrier between us. His shoulders relaxed as he read. He turned the screen toward me. 0% probability he was her father. I'm sorry, I whispered. Are you? Or just sorry you got caught? I had no answer. The truth was messy. Months of lies I'd told myself. What happens now? Now we deal with reality, Jonas said calmly. I'm not her father, so no child support, no custody issues. The divorce will be straightforward. You'll need to contact Miles. But you love her. I've seen it. I was trying to, but she's not mine, Theo. She never was. He stood, staring out at the backyard where he'd planned a swing set. I can't raise another man's child while pretending to forgive the woman who betrayed me. It's not fair, to any of us. Tears came. So you're walking away from both of us. I'm walking away from a life built on lies. He placed separation papers on the table. I've signed them. You have until tomorrow. Otherwise, this goes to court and everything becomes public. I thought of the exposure, the affair, the test, the investigator's evidence, my career, my reputation. I called my friend Mira that night. He's abandoning us when we need him most. But she's not his, Mira. The test proved it. So what? Biology isn't everything. It is to him. I tried Miles the next day. I can't deal with this, he said. I'm not ready to be a father. I'll pay what the court requires, but that's it. I signed the papers that afternoon. The divorce was quick. I kept the house, but refinanced to buy out his share. He took his retirement and most of our savings. Watching him load boxes into a truck was surreal. 7 years reduced to cargo. Will you ever want to see her? I asked. Jonas looked at Elsie, regret flickering briefly. She deserves a father who loves her unconditionally. I can't be that. Every time I'd look at her, I'd remember what you did. I'm sorry, I said. I know it doesn't change anything. Sorry doesn't undo it. After he left, I held Elsie in our empty house, facing a future alone. Miles wanted minimal involvement. My job hung in the balance. Our social circle had turned cold. The affair's thrill had lasted months. The fallout would last forever. 6 months later, I saw Jonas at the grocery store. He looked healthier, happier, with a woman who made him laugh. He nodded politely, but didn't approach. I wanted to apologize again, to bridge the gap, but the distance was permanent. I'd destroyed a marriage for a fling that meant nothing to Miles. I'd lost a husband who would have loved Elsie if she'd been his. I'd deprived my daughter of a devoted father. In the end, the blame was mine alone.